For the results section, present your results in logical sequence, in text, tables and illustrations. Give the most important findings first. Do not repeat all the data in tables and figures. That's a common mistake at the outset. Lots of supplementary materials can be included in an appendix. Give both numeric results, not only as derivatives like percentages, but also as the absolute numbers, and use graphs as alternatives to tables with many entries. Now, if the study result is disappointing, not what you had hoped for, you can always resort to this journal, the Journal of Negative Results. This is a journal which is dedicated to the advancement of all those disappointed about the outcome. But it's a very, very important journal. In my experience, people who have done a set of experiments which have resulted in negative findings, sometimes think, well, we can't even publish this. Well, that's clearly not the case. Results are results. Negative results, I dare say, are almost as good as positive results. And I've said here, the impact factor can be very high for this journal, the Journal of Negative Results. Editorship still up for grabs for that one. Your discussion section, you should emphasize the new and important aspects of the study and the conclusions that follow on. Biggest mistake that people make whenever they start writing papers is they repeat the results section. The first page or two of the discussion is the data duplicated. You should compare and contrast the results with other relevant studies, state the study limitations, explore the implications of findings for future research and clinical practice, and avoid unqualified statements and conclusions not adequately supported by the data. Finally, avoid claiming priority. Lots of people say this is the first study of this, that and the other, when quite honestly that's not the case. Reference section. You should use direct references to original work rather than review articles. Small numbers of references to key original papers often serve as well as more exhaustive lists. Try to avoid using abstracts as references. Avoid citing a personal communication unless it provides essential information not from a public source. And authors are responsible for checking none of the references cited have been retracted. Now, this is an interesting paper which appeared in a journal called Science Editor in 2000. And it looks at the common reasons for rejecting manuscripts in biomedical journals by a chap called Daniel Byrne. And what he did was, in 1995, he sent an 8-page questionnaire that contained 83 questions to a random sample of 50 peer reviewers for JAMA. I think the detail's in there somewhere. He also sent it to 67 editors-in-chiefs of a sample of prominent medical journals and 25 Nobel laureates who were in physiology or medicine. And these are some of the findings from that study. So if you looked at the general deficiencies in medical manuscripts, what's the single most common type of flaw that results in an outright rejection of the manuscript? By far and away, the biggest flaw was the design of the study, followed by interpretation of the findings, which was misrepresentative, the importance of the topic, and none of the people said that presentation of results was the cause for rejection. And to be fair to lots and lots of journals, lots of editors, associate editors and reviewers will be reasonably tolerant of deficiencies in spelling and grammar and allow somebody to take on the burden of correcting that. And it's very, very rare. If something's very good but badly written, somebody will probably go to the trouble of getting that corrected. What section usually contains the most flaws? Well, based on the fact that the study design is the most common reason for rejection, over half were rejected because of problems with methods, and then over 20% discussion and results. And I guess the last question pretty much parallels that. Which section is the most responsible for outright rejection? Methods in over half of the cases, results 28%, discussion 21%. This is quite an important slide. This is from Daniel Byrne's book, and it looks at the four MRAD sections: introduction, methods, results and discussions, and looks at which are too long and too short. And you might predict this. The introduction's by and large usually too long, methods is usually too short, results is usually too short, discussion's usually too long, so bear that in mind. This is some data on the writing deficiencies. Commonest writing deficiency, too wordy, too much redundancy, make every word meaningful. And just to finish on a slightly lighter note, this is my personal view. What I would suggest you try to avoid studies suitable for publication in these journals, and I should add, none of these journals appear on Medline. First journal is the Journal of Anecdotes. Second journal is the Journal of Duplication, or its sister journal, the Journal of Duplication. The third journal is the Journal of Small Studies, warranting further investigation, which we aren't prepared to do. And the fourth study is the Journal of Studies completed many years ago, but I've been studying for the FRCS, you're all.
Just to sort of cover one or two things there, I think that was really extremely helpful, particularly the length of the discussion being too long, the methodology being flawed, all of this. This is something that is very important. And often what's wrong is the statistics are wrong. And we do send papers for a statistical review, just so that you will know, to a statistician. We pay them for it. In relation to the English or whatever, if English is not your first language, don't worry, because we have technical editors who will correct the paper. And believe me, they correct papers written by people for whom English is their first language as well. And so all of this is done, and it's free. We're the only journal that actually gives this service. Okay. Oh, by the way, just one thing I wanted to say about starting a paper. That often in your career you'll get writer's block, and it can be unbelievably difficult. And suddenly say, I can't start. Well, you don't have to start at the beginning. If you feel that you've got, say, the results section, that's the easiest thing for you to start on it. Write that down. And then you fill in the other blocks afterwards. Start on the section that for you is the easiest section. Okay, Kilian, we have plenty of time for questions. So, Roger, you've got the thing over there. So let's see, who wants to ask another question? Good.
Yes, I have a question. How do you select your mesh terms that are often the keywords? Is there any trick to that?
Yeah, John, do you want to deal with that?
Well, I mean, you have to remember the keywords are the things that will appear on PubMed. That's the answer to your question. So you pick whatever keywords, so in other words, you want as many people as possible to read your paper. So what happens is you then say, right, well, now who are the people who are going to be looking for it? If you want to do a literature search, how do you do it? Well, you go to PubMed and you put in BPH, PDE5 inhibitors, for example. Well, then that's an example of what your keywords would be. Just, you've got to think, who do you want to read your paper? And that's what will guide. Yeah, Marcus.
The importance of publishing papers with negative results is pretty fundamental, because one of the I suspect you'll come up with a sort of ethical issue of the temptation to massage it and, mysteriously, P is 0.05. How can we actually make sure that something with a negative result does receive the due credibility and prospect of actually getting published?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the importance of the subject, but I guess the point I tried to make earlier on, Marcus, was that some junior people are completely put off from even submitting the manuscript because they've got a negative result. Well, I think that's the first hurdle to overcome. A negative result is a very valid result. And thereafter, you have to take your chance in terms of which journal you submit your paper to in terms of trying to get it published. But I would, if I would keep going with trying to get a study with a negative result published.